Fascinating indeed, and of course Robert Felix is with us. Robert, that's kind of scary, I gotta tell you.
It is really scary, you know, and right now I live in the Seattle area, but my wife and I have been looking for other locations that might be safer.
Really?
A little bit further south. Not that much.
You know, a lot of people will say, come on, this is gonna be thousands of years from now. The point is, based on talking to you for so many years, and especially on Coast to Coast AM, is that it's a gradual increase that can still cause incredible havoc, can it?
Well, actually, it's not so gradual. Because now,
Really?
up until the 1990s, I think scientists pretty much believed that, but there was a project called GRIP, Greenland Ice Core Project. I think it was in 1989, that they drilled into the ice in central Greenland, and they went down more than 2 miles. So that they could pull up these little 4-inch cores, yeah, and they could study the ice that was, or the snow was deposited as much as 250,000 years ago. At first, they didn't believe their own studies, so they didn't publish this.
Were they baffled?
They were totally baffled. It showed that the ice ages had begun in less than 20 years. So they studied more, and more people were getting those same results. Now, what they finally came up with is that every ice age in the last 250,000 years began in less than 20 years, sometimes in as short as 10 years or even 3 years.
Just like that in time.
Just like that. Now, the thing is, well, the big one that I'll talk about is there was something called the Eemian period. Eemian. But anyway, this was from about 127,000 years ago to 115,000 years ago, which ended with a magnetic reversal, by the way. But anyway, the Eemian period was even warmer than today. And then we descended into full-fledged glacial severity in less than 20 years. So, yeah, I'm saying that when it comes in a hurry. It really does.
And it doesn't take much to disrupt a person's life, right?
Oh, no. Well,
one bad season could screw you up.
It could, and you know, and I see, well, I see the evidence now that it's starting to come. I mean, just in July, there was this record cold across so much of the United States, across the plains, across the southeast, in the east, and I'm seeing more and more of that, and we're having more and more record snows every year. So I fear that we're entering that 20-year period.
Having been raised in the Midwest, we had a lot of discussions about the lakes freezing over, and there would be some seasons that lakes would freeze over in its entirety. The Detroit River would freeze up, Lake Erie would freeze up, Lake Superior would start freezing up. It played an incredible havoc on shipping and commerce and things like that. Do you see that as a commonplace occurrence?
Oh, yes, and I see that. I mean, just look at this last winter. Is that the Great Lakes did freeze more than at any time. Well, no, I shouldn't say any time on record, but certainly more than
in a long time.
Any time since satellite records began. Is that 92% of the Great Lakes were ice covered. There were some people talking about maybe they'd be able to take a snowmobile all the way from Chicago to Canada, and
they might have been able to.
They might have been able to. They might have. And U.S. Steel, they shut down their production because they weren't. You know, they shipped their iron ore by the Great Lakes, and they weren't able to do it. And so we're looking at these things, to me, that indicate something is going on right now.
And then, of course, it gets warm, it melts, but then it comes back with another rough season. I mean, so wintertime this year could be a disaster, right?
Oh, it could. Well, one of the hallmarks of entering an ice age is extremes. And where I learned about this, there was a scientist in the United Kingdom, H. Lamb, Hubert H. Lamb, I think his first name was, but he studied climatology for years. He was probably one of the world's greatest climatologists, wrote several books on the Little Ice Age. But he pointed out that our entry is a time of extremes. And he said, for instance, going into the Little Ice Age, there were areas of the world that had the worst droughts in 300 years.
We're having that now.
Well, then later that year, same location, same year, they had the worst snowstorms in 500 years. So yes,
So
it's
the
a
droughts
time,
went away, but they got replaced with something else.
right. And so these extremes that I'm seeing now that I know that some of the media are saying have to do with global warming, I said, no, they have to do with this cycle. To me, it's a cycle, it's a cycle, it's a cycle. And if we could just get that into our computer models, we'd be seeing a different scenario.
Last winter, we had a rough season where a lot of cattle died. They simply froze to death, and farmers didn't have any place to take them. There were tens of thousands of dead cattle. They had to, at least until things thawed out, they were just left out there in the fields of ice.
That was what, South Dakota, and I think that was like last October.
Decimating to them.
More than 100,000 cattle in South Dakota.
Just like that.
They're gone. What had happened is they had huge rainstorms, so these poor cattle were all wet and soaked, and then came this huge snowstorm, 4 feet of snow.
They
Now,
froze to death.
How do you move in 4 feet of snow?
Yeah.
A cow can't, and so
And you can't eat.
And what the cattle apparently did is this is part of their DNA, whatever, but they all moved into lower locations because it would be a little bit warmer in the lower locations. But then that's when the wind started blowing. That's when the snow started accumulating, and so they froze to death. Yeah.
That could happen to people too.
That could happen to people. And by the way, it's not just South Dakota. That happened last year in Bolivia. Something like 70,000 cattle were killed by huge snowstorms. And then this spring in Bolivia, another 60,000. So, oh yeah, it could happen. Now, at least people were a little bit warned, but I don't know if we'll be warned in time.
And of course, that beef, even though it's frozen, is you can't use it. Right?
Oh, it's lost. And these farmers, they don't have insurance for something like that. So it wiped out a lot of ranchers.
100,000.
100,000 in South Dakota alone.
Wow.
Yes.
What about the sun? Does the sun play havoc with any of this?
Oh, I think the sun has everything to do with it. And what we're looking at, the reason I say that is a big part of it is sunspots. And sunspots are areas of magnetic turbulence on the sun that are actually cooler than the rest of the sun. But there's a strong correlation between times of low sunspot activity and it getting cooler on Earth. And the one I'll bring up really is during the Little Ice Age, there was a period of about 40 years when there were no sunspots.
40 years?
Yeah, about 40 years. It's known as now, we were able to find that out because Galileo had invented the telescope.
Yeah.
Before that, we really didn't know. But scientists were able to look up there and study the sky, and for about 40 years, none. It's called the Maunder Minimum. And that is when the Little Ice Age came along. And also it appears that volcanic activity increases during these times of lower sunspots. Well, right now, and this is according to NASA, this is not my imagination, right now sunspot activity is the lowest it has been in more than 100 years. And 100 years ago, or a little bit more than that, that's when we had what was called the Dalton Minimum, a period of very low sunspot activity. That was sunspot cycle number 5. Now we're in sunspot cycle number 24. And when you look at a graph and see how today's rise and fall of the intensity follows sunspot cycle 5 so closely that a lot of scientists are now saying, well, there's a Landshite.com is a website run by Jeff Sharp who keeps track of this.
Right.
Now NASA, when they're tracking sunspots, they're using all of today's technology. So they're seeing more sunspots than might have occurred during the Dalton Minimum or the Maunder Minimum. But when you look at the sun using the same technology as they had back then, we are matching it almost perfectly. And so Jeff Sharp keeps track of that, and when you look at that chart, you realize we are on our way at least to a Dalton Minimum, maybe to a Maunder Minimum. I think we're headed for a Maunder Minimum.
One of the things we're concerned about, Robert, of course, X flares from the sun, which could play havoc with our power grid. You know, in our campaign, of course, is to get the power grid insulated, protected against something like that. But a lot of people don't factor in the fact that sunspots also can play around with the weather.
Oh, yes, so much. Now, there are some scientists out there who say, no, sunspots have nothing to do with this. But there are others, like the astrophysicist that I talked about, who absolutely say sunspots have everything to do with the weather. They were able, this Piers Corbin that I mentioned, he was able to predict the polar vortex reaching low down into the United States last winter, long before any of the official scientists were able to do it. I mean, the UK Met Office has, what, $40 million worth of computers. As near as I can tell, Piers is working at home with a little laptop. But
Sure.
because he knows what's actually happening, he's able to tell us the truth.
How many undersea volcanoes are there on this planet, and what are they contributing to this?
I think everything. And I think that will be my contribution eventually. When I started writing the book back in 1991, scientists thought there were 10,000 underwater volcanoes in the entire world.
Active?
No, just 10,000.
Okay.
Total. And you know, at least the ones that are active are pumping lava into the sea that's 2,100 degrees Fahrenheit hot. So that we're talking a lot of heat there. But that was 10,000 underwater volcanoes. Well, in 1993, they discovered another 1,100 underwater volcanoes off the coast of Easter Island. So in just a matter of months,
Just in one area?
in one area, in a matter of months, they increased the world supply of underwater volcanoes by 10%. Well, now, I mean, they were so far off. Now, NASA estimates that there are more than 3 million underwater volcanoes.
Jeez.
And they estimate, now, again, not all of those are active.
That's like simmering a pot of water, isn't it?
Oh, to me it is.
Yeah.
They're not all active, but they estimate that there are probably at least 140,000 of them that are active. Well, look at what's happening in Iceland right now.
And what do you mean by active?
Active, I mean the
Volcanoes are spewing ash underwater.
Underwater, not ash necessarily, but just magma that's coming up slowly. Because when you're talking about the above water volcanoes, they have to force their way up through miles of
Water, the pressure holds it down.
Well, but when it's above Earth, they got to above the water. They got to push up through the Earth essentially. Whereas down next to the water, they can when they're below the water, they don't have all that soil above them. They just kind of ooze up out.
Yeah.
But scientists are finding more underwater volcanoes every day. I don't remember the name of it is, but just this summer they discovered the biggest underwater volcanic concept that they've seen. Well, you've probably talked about Bardarbunga volcano in Iceland.
Yeah.
Well, let's face it, that's part of the Mid-Atlantic Ridge.
That's always ready to go.
Yes. Well, that's part of the Mid-Atlantic Ridge that has come up out of the water, but that Mid-Atlantic Ridge is like, what, more than 10,000 miles long. It's made up entirely of volcanoes. How many of those are active? We don't know.
Right.
Now, in the, I'll give a different example. You know, we do hear about the Arctic ice melting, as opposed to Antarctica. I hope we can get to that. But when I was writing the book, scientists couldn't quite understand how this happened. But even though, during the last ice age, even though Canada was covered by 1 to 2 miles of ice, the Arctic Ocean was no more ice covered than it is right now. And they couldn't understand why. Well, they didn't know about the Gakkel Ridge.
Yeah.
There is a chain of underwater volcanoes beneath the water in the Arctic Ocean.
Heating up the water.
Well, this chain, it's bigger than the Alps, actually. It's 1,100 miles long. It's all underwater. Now, scientists thought it wasn't active. But a few years ago, the Max Planck Society sent down submersibles. And the Gakkel Ridge is so active that they had to be careful that it didn't melt some of their cables.
Wow.
So to me, that is what is keeping the Arctic Ocean warmer than the other areas.
When the magma hits the water, what happens?
Well, I've seen pictures of the underwater smokers. Is that essentially it just comes out. You can see the little explosions, so to speak. But apparently that's where other kinds of metals that are rare metals that accumulate there, and there are kinds of shrimp that seem to thrive in this 800-degree water. But I'm looking at, because I don't deny but what the ocean has been warming. But I don't think humans are heating it. I think it's coming from way down there, is that those underwater volcanoes are heating the ocean.
So there's a contributing factor here, because we had talked in our previous Beyond Belief show about a magnetic reversal. So you include a magnetic reversal, underwater volcanoes, sunspots or lack of. All this is hitting us at the same time right now, Robert. What does this all mean?
All of it is hitting us at the same time. Well, what I'm seeing is as the underwater volcanoes heat the oceans, then they're causing more evaporation. So more and more moisture is rising into the sky. But at the same time, the sky is being cooled by the above water volcanoes. So you've got, what I say is warmer oceans and colder skies. That is a recipe for disaster.
And we're in this disaster
as near as I can see, and it appears that volcanic activity is heavier than it has been. I say it appears because scientists didn't used to be able to keep track of volcanic activity all over the world. And so some scientists are saying, no, there's no more volcanic activity than usual. It's just that we didn't know about the other. I think there is. And when I look at magnetic reversals, for instance, the Gothenburg magnetic reversal that I mentioned 11,500 years ago, they have found piles of mammoth bones in Alaska interspersed with volcanic ash, all at the same time as the magnetic reversal. And in Washington State, they had the glacial Lake Missoula floods, and so they have found a tremendous amount of ash from Mount St. Helens that's interspersed with the flood deposits. So again, all of these things happen at the same time.
It's amazing. It's a product of disaster, isn't it? A recipe for disaster.
It is, and yet I think we could survive. If we knew what was coming, I think we could.
But the ice age that you believe we're in is not going to blanket the planet, right? So there are going to be some regions that you can escape to.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, I had mentioned that I'm looking further south from Olympia, Washington. But again, if somebody would look at the map, I have a map on my website that shows where the ice sheets extended during the last ice age. And the ice extended, it covered all of Seattle, 3,000 to 4,000 feet of ice. But then it moved slightly north.
I can't imagine that.
Oh, it's 3 to 4,000. I mean, that's more than half a mile.
Europa.
Yeah, that's more than a half a mile straight up. How do you escape that? Unless you get out before it happens.
Yeah.
But yeah, it went up into Montana, then it followed the glacial Lake Missoula, so that on the north side, not glacial Lake Missoula, the Missoula River. But on the north side of the Missoula River, there was a cliff of ice about 15 stories high. On the south side of the river, you could have survived quite easily. All of Chicago was covered with ice. I don't think it went down as far as St. Louis. I'd have to look at my map to make sure. But all of New England, all 6 states, were totally covered with ice.
And for how long?
Probably 5,000 years. So
5,000 years.
Yeah, it started that particular. The major part of that ice age started about 23,000 years ago.
If it happened today,
yes,
5,000 feet of ice, 5,000 years, the buildings would be covered in ice.
Yes.
They'd be preserved in ice.
Yes.
When it thaws, what happens to those buildings? Do they collapse? Do you dry them out and use them again? What happens?
I don't think they'll be there because ice is plastic. So ice is always moving downhill.
Okay.
They'll
rip it with them.
It will. It's moving slowly, but if you look at a glacier from the air, you usually see it has a spine of darkness right up the center of it, and that's because as it moves down the valley, it grinds rocks off of both sides of the valley, and it flows like water, but very slowly. So all of those rocks end up sort of in the center and moving on down, but it'll wipe things out. I've been to the Athabasca Glacier in Canada, which is now, it's been receding. And a lot of the glaciers in Alaska have been receding. the Mendenhall Glacier.
Are the
been to
glaciers,
that
by the
one.
way, remnants of past ice ages?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
But here's the thing. As they recede, you see ancient tree stumps. Now, they've wiped out the trees themselves, so buildings I'm sure
Yeah.
they would wipe out. But the ancient trunks are there. Now, in today's world, I hear a lot of people taking, media is taking pictures of these tree stumps that are showing up, and they're saying that's proof of global warming. I'm saying, no, that's proof that it used to be warmer than it is now. I was talking to some people this morning who were talking about in the Denver area, they've uncovered mammoth bones from before the last ice age, that as the
Right.
and with points that somehow they had been killed, and so I'm saying, yeah, there were humans existing there and mammoths, so it had to have been warmer.
Sure.
So when people talk to me about this being unprecedented warming, no.
Are we going to wake up one day and have a 10-foot snowfall outside? Is that possible?
Oh, I think various parts of the world, yes, because what essentially, you had mentioned the 5,000 years that the ice builds up. Well, because it takes 100 feet of snow to compress down into 1 feet of ice, then you're going to be looking at winter after winter after winter of 100 feet of snow, 10 stories of snow.
Robert, just driving in the Midwest with a dusting of snow or a little bit of ice renders people, useless.
Yes.
You can't drive on ice. And we're talking about a quarter of an inch.
That's right. Well, just this last winter, Atlanta had those ice storms that the kids
They take down power lines?
Oh,
and
they
everything.
take down power lines. I think, I forget, but I know that kids had to stay in their schools overnight. One of the things I mentioned in my book, as looking at an ice age, is that the climate of Chicago will essentially move to Georgia. So all of a sudden, I'm seeing these snowstorms in Georgia.
The devil went down to
age.
Georgia.
Yeah. So now people survive just fine in Chicago. So you can still survive this.
Yeah, for a while.
If you know.
Not if it keeps building up, though.
But again, it only goes so far south. This last year, when we had the polar vortex, I looked at the maps of that polar vortex, and it was just incredible how those maps curved down and matches
The ice ages.
the ice age, the extent of the glaciation. So to me, it just shows right there where it's going to be covered or not
why.
covered. Well, because the jet stream does change during the ice age. Again, for instance, I had mentioned that Seattle was covered. It only went down as far as Olympia. So there's a convergence zone, essentially, where you have snow on the north side and warmer air on the south. And that convergent zone essentially moves south. And if you're south of that area, you'll be fine as long as you get food.
Are ice ages planet killers? Just wipes out everything?
No, not wipes out. No, because I think that if we're south of that area that's going to be covered, we're going to be fine. We just have to be prepared for a few degrees colder. I think we have to be coming up with different kinds of food. I had one old geologist, Jack Sowers, who was raising acoustic rye. He was experimenting with different kinds of foods that will grow better in a cooler climate. And that's one thing that I would suggest that farmers be looking at, is at least have the seeds ready, that they could plant a different kind of...
I have witnessed, just with a little snowfall, that if a weather forecaster goes on television and says, we have a blizzard coming, the stores are ransacked.
Yes.
They take everything.
Yes.
They buy everything. That's just with one storm. What's going to happen in terms of social unrest when this gets even worse?
Well,
Predict this.
some of it I hate to actually say, but this H.H. Lamb I had talked about one time, a climatologist out of the UK who wrote a book about the Little Ice Age, pointed out that the crops failed. What happened the United Kingdom did not get covered with ice, but what happened is the rainy season lasted 5 weeks longer in the spring.
Okay.
So people were not able to plant their gardens, or they had to plant them late.
It was too soggy.
And then the rainy season came back 5 weeks earlier in the fall. So their crops failed. Well, literally millions of people died of starvation.
Wow.
It was a bad time to go to jail, because sometimes the people who went to jail became food for the other prisoners.
You're kidding.
And they
Cannibalistic?
Cannibalistic, absolutely. And H.H. Lamb talks about the fact that, and this is horrible, but some people ate their own children. It's horrible. So I don't like to talk about that too much, but it's
a reality, though.
Oh, it is.
You can't hide from reality.
There's a book out there. I don't remember the author. It's 1 Second After.
That's William Forster.
Okay, and what happens after an EMP
attack?
Okay,
or an X-flare.
That book, to me, tells me a lot about what would happen after a magnetic reversal.
That's scary.
That's scary, and so I don't really like to talk that much. But again, I'd like people to be prepared.
What do you see right now as the biggest thing we can do as a society to protect ourselves? Is there anything?
I think the biggest thing is just to tell us the truth. You know, right now, if you put me on a plane to Alaska, and you told me in advance that I was going to Alaska, I'd figure out what to do. I'd pack the right things. I'd pack the right survival gear. And I think people would. For short term. Yeah, but people would too. I mean, they're smart. But if you tell me that you're sending me to Florida, and then you put me on a plane, so I've prepared for Florida. Sure. And then you put me onto a plane to Alaska, then I'm in trouble. That's what I think is happening today. We're being told we're going to Florida. We're being told it's global warming. I think we're headed the other direction. So just tell us the truth. And I think that we can do a lot of things.
Do you think you could be wrong?
I hope so.
You want to be wrong?
I want to be wrong, right, I do. But I don't think I could. I could be wrong with the timing. But when I look at what has happened before and when I look at what is happening today, and it's right there, I'm not even a scientist.
You're a former architect.
I am quoting scientists here. I have a 28-page bibliography in this book. I've done my homework. Yeah. And as near as I can see, all of those cycles are there. I could be a little off on timing, but that's about all.
And how do you answer that argument, Robert, from people who say, hey, Robert Felix, you're not a climatologist, you're not a meteorologist, you're a former architect. What are you doing talking about ice ages?
Well, I think part of it is that I can look at it without my mind being colored by other things. But what I have to say is that I've had plenty of climatologists, geologists, physicists, astrophysicists who have endorsed the book, who have read it, and who at least agree with me enough to have endorsed it. So that's what I'd have to say is that the people who have published in this field do agree with it.
When you first got into this, when you first wrote Not by Fire but by Ice back a long, long time ago,
yes.
What scared you about this book?
I guess probably, well, the shock to me at first was the magnetic reversals, because when I was studying the dinosaur extinction, magnetic reversals were just mentioned in passing, and I have to say, in all honesty, I'd never heard of a magnetic reversal until I started studying this. And then as I studied more and more and more, and then I found out about the underwater volcanoes. Again, underwater volcanoes contribute to an ice age.
It's great science.
I couldn't find anybody. Finally, I found, and I'm not thinking of his name now, but I finally found a scientist he was a South African geologist who published in 1929 saying that underwater volcanoes could cause an ice age. Other than that, I didn't find anybody who had said that. So I think that'll be my contribution.
The one thing we know for sure, Robert, this planet is undergoing a major change.
It is. And you know, this little ice age cycle that I've talked about, it correlates with the collapse of the Roman Empire. It correlates with the collapse of the Grecian Empire. It correlates with the collapse of the Sumerian. Yep. Correlates with the time when Genghis Khan swept out of the north.
But we always come back, don't we?
We always come back, but I'm afraid it could be correlating with the end of a few empires right now.
Robert, thanks for being on Beyond Belief.
Thank you, George.
It's called Not by Fire, but by Ice, the coming ice age. Get yourself a coat and get ready for what's to come. I'm George Noory, and thanks for watching Beyond Belief.